All right, welcome back. This is going to be part 39 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And in this video, we're going to continue on with carbon-14 dating. And I think one more video after this one, and we'll be finished with carbon-14 dating. We're going to show, in the last one, we're going to go through the errors, some dating errors, some pretty substantial errors that were made, and to show you just how bad carbon-14 dating is. And just like the other ones, there's really no good dating method except the Bible. That's the only dating method that we really need. But at any rate, I'm going to briefly go over some and more detailed than others. And so, but I hope that at least it's giving you an idea of the flavor of what's going on. And again, with the some of the areas that I told you that you could go to learn more in previous videos, you can still go and check out those areas to learn more, And so, but at any rate, if you notice on the screen here, we're going to continue on with this. It says carbon-14 dating method relies on measuring the amount of C14 in the fossil. There's three scenarios. There is a lot of C14 remaining in the fossil. The organism recently died. There is very little C14 remaining in the fossil. The organism has been dead for a long time. There is no detectable C14 in the fossil. It is believed to have been dead for over 60,000 years. Now, I've also seen that they'll go as far as 70,000 years also. And so, but it used to be, I remember hearing them just saying 50,000 years. And so, or even upwards of 100,000 years. See, you can see these numbers, guys, that are played with. It just seems like they manipulate their theories to match, or at least try to have an answer to what a lot of times creationists, the holes that creationists poke into their theories. But any rate, after 10 half-lives, the C14 should be completely gone out of the organism. Anything older than 60,000 years should have no detectable C14. And again, guys, you're going to see different maximum dates with here. I've seen 70,000 years. I've seen 100,000 years. And so, but at any rate, I don't remember ever hearing anything any longer than 100,000 years. But just to let you know, I have heard upwards of 100,000 years. What do we need to know to determine how many half-lives have expired? How fast it decays. Measured in half-lives, this is known, 5,730 years. So every time it halves, you add 5,730 years to it. The starting amount, a critical detail of C14 in the fossil, how much C14 was in the organism when it died. It would be like finding a candle burning and wanting to know how long it has been burning. You measure its burning rate at 1 inch per hour. How long has it been burning? Well, you need to know how long the candle was when it started. If we find 1,000 C14 atoms in a fossil, do we know how much C14 was decayed? No. What was the starting amount? Just like the candle, we know the speed of decay, but how long was the candle? How much was in the organism when it died? These are assumed things, guys. Now we're getting into some of these problems here. It's assumed. It's based on assumptions, is all it is. How C14 is determined. By using another form of carbon, there are two types of carbon used in the dating process. Carbon-14 unstable and carbon-12, which is stable. When an organism is alive, it has the same ratio C12 to C14, what is found in the atmosphere, 1 trillion C12 to 1 C14. It is assumed, there you go right there, the key. It is assumed that the ratio that is found in the atmosphere today is the same as it has always been. This is a critical assumption. It is assumed that the ratio that is found in the atmosphere today is the same that it has always been. This is a critical assumption. If the assumption is true, the C14 dating is a reliable dating method 60,000 years. If the assumption is false, then C14 dated method is not reliable, is not a reliable dating method. Now, let's talk about equilibrium. The C14, the amount of C14 in the atmosphere stays constant. That's what we refer to as equilibrium. It stays constant. The amount added replenishes or equals to what is being decayed. Dr. William Libby, an evolutionist, was the founder of C14 dating. He noticed that we are not in equilibrium, about 25% out of equilibrium. Calculations made have estimated if C14 started when the world was first formed, starting at 0%, it would take about 30,000 years for the Earth to reach equilibrium. Now, guys, that's a key point to make there. Dr. William Libby believed that the Earth was 4.5 billion years old. And when he noticed that the Earth was not at equilibrium, he noticed it as an error in his calculations and ignored the numbers. Due to his evolutionary beliefs, he ignored what the data was showing because it did not match what he believed. You see that, guys? Do you see what I'm talking about? In the 1960s, the same experiments were done again by chemists, and they got the same results, showing that the numbers Libby got was not an error, but was fact. That's observation and repeatability. That is science. But you know what? They don't like what they're getting, so they ignore it. There is a strong indication, despite the large errors, that the present natural production rate exceeds the natural decay rate by as much as 25%. Now, when we talk about equilibrium, we're talking about what you want to do is imagine you got a canister and you're pouring water in. Now, you put a hole in this canister. Now, at some point in time, if you pour the right amount of water in, or the hole is just the right size, you're going to get what's called equilibrium. The water is not going to go any higher, or it's not going to go any lower. It's just going to continuously be at that same area. And so that's what you call equilibrium. And so now if you start pouring a whole bunch more water in than what's leaking out, then it's going to fill up. Or if you don't pour a whole lot of water in as it's pouring out, then you're going to lose some until it gets below that what's leaking out. And so, but that's what we refer to as equilibrium, when the amount going in equals the amount going out, and it just stays the same. Now, what he's saying here, or what they're saying here, is that it takes 30,000 years. It would take 30,000 years for the Earth to be at equilibrium. But this is the thing, guys, we're not. We're not. And they said it takes 30,000 years to do that. So what does that tell you? Well, it's a good, strong indication that the world is not 4.5 billion years old, 4.5 billion years old. It's younger than 30,000 years. And what does that match up to? It matches up to the biblical timeline. And so now what we're saying is that were there any C14 being created during the pre-flood world? Are there any factors that can affect the amount of carbon in the atmosphere? Yes. The factors include cosmic ray penetration of the Earth's atmosphere, something keeping the rays from getting through to the Earth, like a canopy. And we're going to talk about the canopy theory. Not all creationists agree with it, but it is a possibility. And again, guys, the canopy theory is what it's referred to as. It's a theory. It's just a guess, but we look at certain things about the past and certain evidences and try to make a good about the best guess that we can. Because remember, the pre-flood world that then was perished. It's gone. The strength of the Earth's magnetic field, that can be a factor. If this is getting weaker and weaker, which it is, then more rays can get into the Earth. CO2, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. The flood of Genesis. The flood buried much carbon from living things, living organisms to form coal and oil. This buried carbon, mostly C12, is about 100 times the carbon in the present biosphere. There was a greater content of C12 in the atmosphere before the flood, which could greatly change the ratio of C12 to C14. This would give incorrect dates. There is more carbon in the ground today than anything that exists today. A tremendous amount of vegetation was buried to form the coal oil deposits. The ratio could have been several trillion to one, drastically changing the results. So if you think about a protective canopy, again, we are going to come back to this. So the canopy would be a something that another layer to our atmosphere, and then it would have different type of properties to it. One of them being a light transference. Again, we're going to come back to that. I don't want to get ahead too much on this, but it could protect the Earth from harmful UV rays, and it's quite possible, guys, that there might not have been any C14 being created at all. And so, where do they think the canopy would have been? It's somewhere around 10 to 11 miles. And that would be really close to where that C14 was being created. And so it is a reasonable theory. And so, again, we don't know, though. We don't know. It's just a theory. But again, remember, we are not at equilibrium when it comes to C14 in our atmosphere. And so, like the evolutionists say, if the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, we should have long been in equilibrium a long time ago. But when we're not, and it's supposed to take 30,000 years, good grief, now I can start to see why they started ignoring those numbers. Now, lastly, the assumption carbon-14 dating is based on has been proven false. We know, now this is a quote, we know that the assumption that the biospheric inventory of C14 has remained constant over the past 50,000 years or so is not true. And there's the reference there. Elizabeth K. Ralph and Henry M. Michael, 25 years of radiocarbon dating, the American scientist, September, October 1974. Now, if we detect C14, it is good evidence that it is not millions of years old. Anything that we would test, anything older than 60,000 years should not have any detectable C14. Now remember that, guys. Remember that. That's key. Coal is assumed to have formed over 100,000 to millions of years to form. If this is true, then there should not be any C14 found. However, every sample that has been taken today they are finding detectable carbon-14 in the coal. The coal cannot be any older than 60,000 years. Fossil wood, estimated to be 200 million years old, still contained carbon-14. What does that say, guys? That it's not any old, it doesn't match their 60,000 years. And so, again, you're seeing these problems. Now, the next video that we're going to go into, we're going to look at even more. And it's going to blow your mind. And so, we're going to stop right there. And like I said, guys, you definitely don't want to miss the next video. And so, we're going to look at some things that's going to make your jaw drop on where they found carbon-14. And so, it is not a reliable dating method. And so, and again, when I had one evolutionist say that they proved dinosaur and man didn't exist because of carbon-14 dating. And so dinosaurs died off, well, by their theories, their guess, 65 to 70 million years ago. And now you can't use carbon-14 dating on that, at least in their theory. It doesn't mean you can't test them. You can't test the bones, and they have. They have, and so it's pretty remarkable what they found. And so, but again, it's not a reliable dating method. It just is not. And so, When someone tells you that they use carbon-14 dating to prove something on evolutionists, they do not know what they're talking about. They're completely in error in that area. And so, but anyway, guys, be looking forward to the next one. I love you. I hope the Lord blesses you real good. Bye-bye.